Welcome back to the last lap. My name is Jimmie, and Matthew's on my left as always. We are back bringing you guys the latest news in NASCAR from this week, and we're also going to do a tribute for Clint Bowyer and Jimmie Johnson since they ran their last full-time Cup race this Sunday. So get ready for this episode, and we'll get right into it. The first topic on today's show is some announcements that came out today for some new rides going into 2021. So Matthew's going to go ahead and address those.
All right. So the first news was that Ryan Preece will be back to the 37 car for the Cup Series. Now this move I was kind of surprised with because I certainly thought he wasn't going to be back because of his not so good performance this year. Even though he did end the year pretty well with 2 top 10s, but he's going to have another year in the 37 car. We'll see how he does next year. I don't expect anything different from this year because JTT is not really the best team, but we'll see how he does next year. The second news, the big news today, was Daniel Hemrick will be driving the number 18 car for Joe Gibbs Racing in the Xfinity Series. He's going to replace Riley Herbst, who drove that car this past season. Daniel Hemrick was part of a part-time role for Junior Motorsports in the 8 car this year. It turns out how he'll do this next year with this car, we're not 100% sure. He still has a one race in all 3 series, but he's been close a few times. So I hope though he can able to, finally win a race in NASCAR in his career for next year. So let's see how he does. I'm sure he's going to make the playoffs because he's in a competitive ride. So he's probably going to make the playoffs. Another news for the Xfinity Series, Brett Moffitt will be driving the 02 car for the Xfinity Series. Now he did race this car this year, but he wasn't on the points because he wasn't racing full time. He was racing full time in the Truck Series. But next year he's going to be moving up to full time in this 02 car in the Xfinity Series. Now this car is an underfunded team, but it has shown does show speed at occasions. Like he can run top 10 at times. In terms of he'll make the playoffs, I'm not 100% sure if he can. I mean, we've seen teams though like Brian Sieg and Brandon Brown make the playoffs in the last 2 spots. So it is possible for Brett Moffitt to sneak in there on points, but we'll just see how the team does next year. And one last thing, there's a rumor going on around that Riley Herbst will be driving the 98 car for Stewart-Haas Racing. It hasn't been confirmed yet, but it's been spreading around like wildfire since the Daniel Hemrick news came out today. From my personal opinion, I do not recommend this guy because this guy has not been the best. We've seen him in a lot of wrecks this year. If they do sign him, who knows? Maybe he'll have a better year next year, or he'll just have another mediocre to bad season like he did this year. Even though he did make the playoffs, but I don't see him being a contender unless he proves me wrong next year in SHR. So that is the news so far for free agency and all 3 series.
So most of those announcements are mostly coming from the Xfinity Series this year, and it's going to be interesting to see how that series racks up for next year, who will be the contender for a championship. So we'll keep you guys updated on any more news that might come out. So we're going to move on to our next topic, which is a little tribute to Jimmie Johnson and Clint Bowyer. The first driver we're going to be honoring in this video is Clint Bowyer. So he ran his last race on Sunday, driving the number 14 for Stewart-Haas Racing. He had a pretty decent career. He won 10 times, with his last win being at Michigan in 2018. He won quite a few races with Richard Childress Racing earlier in his career, and 2 of those wins were at restrictor plate tracks. They were at Talladega, and one was in 2010 and one was in 2011. So I think he really had that tandem racing down that they had back in those years. So Clint, he was a really good restrictor plate racer, and he was really good in Stewart-Haas equipment too. It's hard to pick a favorite moment from Clint because while his on track moments weren't the best, his off track moments were absolutely hilarious. He had so many interviews where he would just goof off and talk funny. And I think that's the part that sticks out to me the most just because of how funny of a guy he was. So it's going to be interesting to see him up in the Fox booth next year to see that energy come to the track next year from the booth.
So my favorite moment with Clint Bowyer was when was this one I was the All-Star. I was at this race actually, the All-Star race in 2019, and Larson won, but Clint Bowyer decided to pick a fight with Ryan Newman and start punching him while he was there on the car. Now I know that probably wasn't a popular move because he still had his helmet on, he was still in his car. That was kind of like a chicken move, but to me that was kind of my favorite moment because I was there when that happened. I was like, what is going on? Like, yeah, it's like you didn't expect that. You did not expect that at all, especially at an all-star race. I mean, you don't expect a fight breaking out in an all-star race when it's all about winning $1 million with no points on the line. And as far as his plans for the future, he's going to be with Fox Sports in the booth of Mike Joy and Jeff Gordon. It's kind of funny since Jeff Gordon and Clint Bowyer, they kind of history, so it's going to be interesting how that goes with those two. But I'm sure they're going to be fine. I mean, it's going to be – I think the Fox Sports is going to improve next year because I think just the two of them last year, it didn't really – I didn't really like that compared to when they had three people in the booth. So I think they're going to make that Fox booth great again like it was a few years ago when Dale Walter was still on there. So I'm looking forward to see Clint Bowyer in the Fox booth bringing us a lot of entertainment for the next few years.
Jimmie Johnson will be the other driver we are talking about in today's video. And needless to say, he had a fantastic career, arguably top two NASCAR driver all time, right up there with Richard Petty. The debate might be back and forth between which one of them is better, but he's easily in that conversation. So just a little recap of his career. He was a 7-time champion, and he won 5 in a row, 06, 07, 08, 09, 2010. Then he won again in 2013, and then he won his final championship in 2016. So he won all those championships within 10 or 11 years of each other, which is absolutely insane. He won 83 races, his last one coming in Dover in 2017. Since 2017, he's been kind of slow. He hasn't really been up there in contention to win. He had a few chances where he was able to win and had a really good car, but he just couldn't capitalize. So it's kind of unfortunate to see his career kind of go out the way it was the past few years, but that doesn't have any kind of impact on the career he's had on the track and off the track with everything he's brought to our sport. So Matthew's going to go ahead and say his favorite moment and then give us insight of what he's going to do in the future.
So my favorite moment with Jimmie Johnson, to be honest, it was when his last win at Dover in 2017. The reason why, it's not because it's just his last win, even though we thought it was going to win more than – yeah, so we didn't know that was going to be his last win. But the thing that stuck out to me was when he was crossing that finish line, you can hear all those people cheering. Now, I remember every time I went to a race, Jimmie Johnson was actually getting booed. You'd be surprised. Like, back then, they didn't like Jimmie Johnson winning all those races and championships, and people started booing him. So when he heard all those people cheering, it's like, it's like that step in your career. Like, everybody's now appreciating what you've done instead of, just booing you because you're winning all the time and stealing their favorite drivers' chances to win. I mean, all these drivers that are retiring, I mean, they go through that. Like, Jeff Gordon went through that. Like, he was booed back in the day. Then he started, getting popularity. Even Tony Stewart, that guy was one of the most hated drivers on the track. But then, and towards the end of his career, people started appreciating, and people always started cheering every time he was getting introduced. We're going to see that more when these drivers retire. Yes, even Kyle Busch. You may not admit it right now, but it will happen because every driver, when they get old, they're not that they're not in their prime anymore. People start appreciating their greatness because of what they have done in their primes, basically. And that's what Jimmie Johnson went through that race. And even when towards his retirement, people started cheering him on even more since they have great legacies. His future now, he's going to be running part-time next year for Chip Ganassi Racing in IndyCar this time in the 48 car. It's going to be road courses only on a part-time basis. It's going to be interesting since it's going to be it's definitely going to be a different car than Jimmie Johnson has raced in almost 20 years. So it's going to basically be a whole new skill set. It's going to be basically different routines, different pit stops. So it's going to be interesting how well he adapts, especially in his first races. But I'm hoping we see Jimmie Johnson has at least a success, and maybe just win at least a race. So can't wait to see what he does next year.
And also on top of that, him and Chase Elliott are probably going to be running the Rolex 24 in January. So that'll be interesting to see him and Chase Elliott racing together. Hopefully that all ties together. There was some misconception there. Rick Hendrick might have spoken a little bit too soon on all that stuff, but it'll be interesting to see that
That's
for
what
sure.
happens when you're busy celebrating. You let things slip out, like
Mhm.
contracts, extensions, or free agency stuff, or even that.
That is all for today's episode of The Last Lap. Next week, we are going to go over some driver ratings and give some certain drivers grades on how they performed in the 2020 season. We're going to do the playoff drivers and a few other important drivers in the sport as well. So make sure you tune in for that next week. Thank you guys for watching. Make sure you check us out on Instagram, subscribe, like this video. We're trying to grow as much as we can, and everything you guys do helps us a lot, and we really appreciate it. So thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you guys in the next one.